Hello and welcome to episode 8 of my Formula 1 career. I'm Ian and you join me here 10 minutes into free practice 1 as I'm just about to go off and do my track acclimatization. I did need 2 laps to do this as I missed a gate coming out of turn 13, which you just go under that little bridge there. So I had to sort of redo it again and this time had no mistakes at all. I had good pace on the softs whilst doing the track acclimatization and I was 1 second down on my teammate Nico Hulkenberg, who did set his times on the super softs, which is pretty good. That's where you expect to be. You expect to be a second slower on the slower compound. We came back out of the pits 17 minutes later and did tyre management, and we managed to do a dummy qualifying run just after it with rich fuel, and we managed to go 140.1, which matched Daniel Ricciardo in the Red Bull exactly. So that was very, very promising, despite the obvious fact that I set that time on the super softs, whereas Danny Rick did go around on the softs. So again, you've got to assume the softs are a second slower, so it proves that their car is at least a second quicker than ours. But because of the success of the dummy qualifying run, midway through the session we did go out and actually complete the qualifying pace because the weather was similar to the expected weather conditions in qualifying the following day. It was expected to be around 20 degrees, which is exactly the temperature that it was when we went out to do our qualifying pace. I managed to shave a 10th off my previous time, so I did a 140 dead, which put us up with an expected qualifying pace of 7th place, which is fantastic. We were expected to be around sort of 15th. That's what they were sort of happy with, but we managed to get it up into P7 based off of our simulations, which is fantastic. With 20 minutes to go on quite a busy free practice 1, we did go out again on the ultra softs because we do of course have to hand back the 2 most worn compounds, so we figured let's get rid of the ultra softs so that we have the softs for FP2. So we went out again and we had a fantastic battle with Fernando Alonso right at the end of the session. Later on the Friday, we're 10 minutes into free practice 2 now, and we went out 10 minutes into the session on the soft tyres just to see how the grip was on the circuit. It was still quite green. We obviously have had free practice 1, but it's still a little bit green out there because right at the end of qualifying, once qualifying is complete, rain is expected to come down. So that means the track will be very, very green on race day. So whilst we will more than likely be starting the race on the ultra soft tyres, there is a possibility we could be running the softs straight after that, maybe doing a 1-stop or something like that. So we did go out just for subsiding laps on the soft tyres, but 30 minutes later we completed the race strategy on the super softs. We didn't have any concern at all, and the reason we did the race strategy in free practice 2 is because the weather temperature dropped, the air temperature dropped. It was down to 17 degrees, which is what is anticipated for race days. Expected to be light cloud, 17 degrees, and that's exactly what it was. So that's why we went out. We didn't have any dramas at all, but we didn't bother going out again for the rest of the session. So we sort of sat in the garage for the next 50 minutes just sort of doing simulations on the computer, that sort of a thing. Because what we wanted to do is we wanted to save a fresh set of super softs for fuel saving, and then of course we wanted to do the ultra softs for race strategy once more, just to give us a slightly better idea of what we can do during the race. So of course Saturday morning, free practice 3, we were the first cab off the rank, but we did let Valtteri Bottas pass. He was right behind us and we figured there's no point in holding him up, and we went and completed the fuel saving. That was the first thing we did in free practice 3 on the fresh super soft, but we did have a little bit of difficulty. It's very, very difficult for my style of driving to save fuel around here, so it was quite a difficult thing to do. So we do have to be mindful when we go into the race not to take too much fuel out of the tank at the start of the race, because I could be really, really struggling later on. But with 20 minutes remaining in the session, we went out again and did the race strategy on the ultra soft tyres, and we did even better than before. We were 3.5 seconds up on our expected time going around. So that does mean that we can still sort of look at almost having a full tank of fuel because we're doing so well for time based off our expectations. It does mean that, hey, we can put a little bit more fuel in, weigh the car down a little bit more, but then of course we don't have to worry about fuel in the race. during the team meeting, I was given the target of 11th or higher in qualifying. It was cloudy, 19 degrees, so a little bit cooler than what we were expecting. We were expecting around 20 degrees, so it was 1 degree cooler, the air temperature that is. So that shouldn't play into us too much. We went out just behind Ricciardo. We did have a couple of cars. I think Grosjean was out of the ranks first, then it was Massa and then Stroll, both Williams drivers, but we came right out behind Ricciardo. We backed off a little bit just so we could get a bit of breathing room from our compatriot, and off we went for our first lap in qualifying. As you can see, a remarkably good lap there. I'm really stoked with how that went. So because of that, with a 1:38.7, we had no need to go out again. So it does mean we can save a set of ultra soft tyres for Q2, which there's no guarantees that we're going to be getting into Q3 this time. So we may have to sort of go out a couple of times, and we only have a set of ultra softs and a set of super softs, and we don't really want to use the super softs if we can help it. So having 2 sets of ultra softs really helps us going into Q2. So at the end of Q1, then we did lose, of course, 5 cars. As always, we lost Pascal Wehrlein, Marcus Ericsson, Lance Stroll, Stoffel Van Dorn, and Kevin Magnussen was the 5th man out. Fernando Alonso just squeezed in right behind Danny Kvyat. Of course, this is his home race. Our teammate Nico Hulkenberg down in 12th. He was quite a way off the pace from us. He was about 5.5 tenths behind us. So he had a lot of work to do in Q2. We went out again early in Q2, but this time we didn't set the best lap. We posted a 1:39 dead, which is 3 tenths down on our Q1 time. So I showed how much of a stonking lap Q1 was, because we were 3 tenths down on a track that was slightly more rubbered in. So by the time everyone had gone around and set their first laps, there was 5 minutes remaining and we were sitting down in P12, which wasn't going to be enough, of course, to get into Q3, which meant that we did have to go out again. But thankfully, because we saved those set of ultra softs from Q1, it did mean we had a spare set of ultra softs laying around, unused, of course. So we went out right towards the death, and once more I'll be quiet so you can see if it's enough to get through.
2 minutes remaining in the session. We need a good lap here. We're out of qualifying.
The second lap was much better, of course, but we only took just over 2/10 out of our previous time, which meant we had to do a little waiting game as we were on our cool-down lap to come back into the pits. We, of course, were watching the timing screens because we were looking at Romain Grosjean in particular, but of course Nico Hulkenberg as well, because he can put in a good lap when he wants to, but Grosjean couldn't improve on his time, and we just squeezed into Q3 ahead of Romain Grosjean, Fernando Alonso, Danny Kvyat, Nico Hulkenberg, who will start as low as 14th. And Carlos Sainz was the last place car, posting a 1:39.2, just under 5/10 from our time. With only one unused set of ultra soft tyres, we had to do what we always do. We had to sit and watch all the other cars go around and set first laps, but we didn't want to. We wanted our ultra softs to be pristine right at the end of the session. The sun has come out now. The air temperature's climbed back up. It's back to 20 degrees, and you can see that Felipe Massa actually had an invalidated lap time the first time he went around. He got caught for corner cutting. So with just 3 minutes left in the session, we went out and led the way ahead of all the other cars that were coming out for their second laps, as it was really, really difficult. It was Felipe Massa who was behind us, so he was a bit worried because, of course, he had an invalidated lap time. It wasn't a very good time either, so it did mean that it put us in a good position to potentially pip him at the final post, unless he put in a good lap behind us. But, of course, he had us in front of him, giving him a bit of dirty air, and I'll stay quiet for the final lap in qualifying from there. Fantastic lap at the end there, a 1:38.2, which is my best lap of the race weekend so far, by far. And what was interesting is we have pipped both Sergio Perez and Esteban Ocon from Force India to 7th place. Amazing stuff. It does give us a bit of work to do in tomorrow right at the race start, because we're going to be really struggling to hold on to 7th place. After that long straight coming into that first right-hander, they're going to have a little bit more power from their Mercedes engine. So you can expect to see Perez and Ocon really, really nipping at our heels. But hopefully we can get a good race start for tomorrow.
We were surprised by our pace in Q3. Were you?
Yeah, I was a bit. Yeah, we weren't expecting to do as well as we did. We've been having a little bit of difficulty with the engine, so to come out in Q3 and put in such a good lap is a fantastic achievement for the whole team. We weren't really expecting to get into Q3, despite we did some qualifying runs in practice, and we did sort of see that 7th place was achievable, but realistically we didn't think we were going to get there. So to be starting as high as we will be is pretty cool.
Do you think you can put the fight to Force India tomorrow?
It's too early to say at the moment. I'm not that optimistic about it. They've got a fantastic package, particularly with the Mercedes engine there. So it's going to be quite tricky. But never say never. We'll just have to wait and see for tomorrow. Thanks.